Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Girija. We're going to talk about the legal side of your business, but I think you're going to want to hear this. This isn't the boring, stuffy stuff, right? This
Yeah, it's
is
not.
this is like let's create the foundation for growth. Let's create the foundation for success. Let's start to treat our business like the growing, thriving entity that it is intended to be. So I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I'm Girija Patel. I am a lawyer in Houston, Texas, and I'm a business lawyer. And I do intellectual property as well with my clients. My main focus is the small business owner. It is to provide, legal solutions and advisory for my small business owners because a lot of times we get unnoticed. The small business owner gets in that corner where they don't know what to do anymore because they don't have accessibility to the law in advance. And they also sometimes money is an issue. And so, we want to, like how you said, build it today. We want to preempt it so we can actually start creating a foundation that's building for success and not something where there's a lot of loose ends and gaps where we're opening ourselves up for a lot more exposure to risk and ultimately financial risk. Like that's the biggest thing that really kills a lot of small business owners.
I see people posting things all the time about tactics, strategies, ways to grow your business, ways to market, ways to get more clients, more customers. You don't really see a whole lot of talk around the foundational aspects of your business. Now, it's not as sexy to be posting stuff about how you should make sure that your bathrooms are clean and tidy, or that, you need to have, proper parking spaces. Those things are necessary, but they're not the fun, exciting things to talk about. People don't think to themselves, this could make me more money. This could save me money. This could keep me in business. And I think we need to take a step back sometimes and we need to say, okay, well, even if your business is in a early stage and you don't necessarily have a lot of extra cash flow, there are certain things that you need to do to make sure that your livelihood, your business can continue to thrive and grow and get to that desirable place where you can scale and all of that stuff. We need a good solid foundation. For those listening who are thinking to themselves, I don't even know what I need, like, where does somebody start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's actually full of many answers. So I want to actually start from the very beginning. Regardless of what kind of business you own, you need to know what your business and what your personal values are and mission is. And once you have your mission realized and you know what your values are, which are inevitably embedded into your business's values as well, then you can move forward on the strategies you want to use because there's a lot of consumption out there of a lot of things, whether it's marketing, whether it's financial strategies, and even legal strategies. There's some things out there too along me, and then there's a handful of lawyers that are doing what I do also. And so there's a lot of different strategies out there. And there's some things that are evergreen, some things that you have to do, you need to do, and you should do. Start from your mission statement because that's super important. Because if you don't know why you're even in business or the purpose of your business and what makes your business tick and you tick, you won't be able to move forward. Plus, it gives you a better mindset and you're stronger in your mind at that point. And that's like your North Star. You know which direction to go towards. Now, with regards specifically to the law, I would really start off with what kind of business you have and what the purpose is, and what's your long goal, your end goal. Like, what's the long game that you have? Because right when we start as entrepreneurs, especially, so, I know that you have a lot of small business owners, but most of them start as entrepreneurs too, Whether you started something on your own or whether you purchased something that was already in existence or whether you inherited it, it's still a form of entrepreneurship. And, sometimes we just like want to jump off that plane and then figure things out. Well, we can't always figure out our safety net while we're doing that. So some of the things that you want to think about is what's the long-term goal that you have? Are you intending on keeping this and then the legacy is left behind for your family to inherit? Or is this something that you intend to sell? And then what kind of risk exposure your business has? Are you selling on web? Are you just selling online, like, just in time inventory where you're ordering and you're selling? Or are you providing healthcare services? Like, it really depends, like what kind of services and products you're providing. With that, then you want to start with your number one thing is your entity. Like, what is the kind of entity you're forming? And what I mean by that is, are you LLC? Are you a corporation? Are you a limited partnership? Like, what kind of structure does your business have? Mind you, you don't even have to have an entity. You could just be a regular solopreneur, business owner, or a general partnership. Of course, there's pros and cons to all of that, and you have to really see where it is. A lot of times you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, do an LLC. And the reason is because you ultimately have a lot of protection for your personal assets and your personal liability versus a company owning something. If something were to happen, they are the ones that are bearing the risk and the liability. So that's why, there's like this whole conversation about that. So that's the number one thing you want to have. And then when you're building the business, you have to really see who are the people that we're interacting with? Who are the third parties outside of me as a business owner and my business? Employees, contractors, clients, vendors. Vendors could include manufacturers. Vendors could include maybe people that you're working with or collaborating with, or so what are the different people that you are working with and what roles do they play? Then you want to see, do you have contracts with them? Contracts are important. Even if you're doing business with your best friend or a family member, you need to have an agreement. And it's not because you don't trust them. And that's the mindset we need to change, is that we're getting into a contractual binding agreement because we trust them. Because if you don't follow through with it, you're going to be far more in a tough spot than if you didn't have something. Because when you don't have something, it's easier to, say a lot of stuff and people don't know what the reality is. But you are getting into a contractual relationship because you trust somebody, and you should trust them, right? If you're doing business with them, like, why wouldn't you want to sign something? But that contract should be literally a reflection of the conversations you've already had with them. What kind of agreements you've already had, what understandings you've had about money and how you're going to be collaborating, whose job description is what in that collaboration, or what the expectations are, who's selling what you're receiving, how the payment schedules are meant to be, what happens if someone wants to leave, like how do you do that? And then another really important thing is the intellectual property. Like when you're creating content, work product for your business, who owns that at the end of the day? It's a very, very important aspect, because intellectual property, so that could be, your trademark, that could be like your brand, your logo, that could also be the content that you're creating. So it could be a book that you've written, a workbook, whether it's like, the photography or the videography that you're doing for your company, or if you're selling it, all of these things. And so who's the ultimate owner? And so that's something that the contract should be identifying as well. And so contracts are super important too. So your entity, your contracts, and then other things like compliance. Like, are you industry compliant? What is it in your industry that is required? And are you compliant with it? So if you are, say, for example, in the health industry, and there's a lot of compliance and regulations there, or if you're in the real estate industry, there's a lot of regulations and compliance that are required as well. And even if you're an online business owner, there's certain like local state requirements that you need to make sure that you've signed up for, or you've registered with your state for it. And so these are small little nuances that sometimes we overlook, just like the parking lot issue. We might just overlook it and then we have to deal with it at that time. But if you have a working, knowledge of it, then you're not completely like blindsided. And that's the thing. You don't want to be blindsided as an entrepreneur or as a business owner. You want to be focused. You don't want to be all the time just stressed out because you don't know what you don't know. And so those are, some of the things. And if you have a website, you want to make sure your website, again, has the right compliancy check marks to it as well. There's all these different things that you have to do for the website as well. And so these are like some of the big issues that come. And then of course, insurance, you want to make sure you have insurance. Like it's not just generally a very legal thing, but at the same time, it is a legal thing, right? Because sometimes you're looking to the insurance companies. And so have your general insurance, have some of the, tick the check boxes for that as well.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about the contract side of things. I have a lot of colleagues that are also business owners, and I know that not having like an employment agreement in place is kind of come back to bite them in the ass under
Mm.
certain circumstances. And we see things like this with newer businesses that don't have the team, they don't have the support, they don't have the legal counsel to say, hey, you should really make sure that these things are standard in your business
Mhm.
because bad stuff can happen. Um,
Exactly.
I want to come back to that though,
Yeah.
because while you were talking, something popped into my mind that I think may be a question for some of the people listening. Because as you're talking about all of these things, when we know that we need something, we just go to handy dandy Google and we type in who we're looking for, who do we need to hire for this? What business can I go to that can provide that product or service? But like you mentioned, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so I'm curious, do you then, for your clients, do you help them identify what they need?
Yeah, I do. And so part of some of my services that I offer do that exactly. I have a audit that I do with my clients if they want me to come in and do a full audit on their businesses. So basically I go through all of that and I see where the gaps are. And so it's really, there's like I have, and I'm not trying to plug myself in, but there is like this 5-day challenge that I have, which is a walkthrough self-paced audit that you can do and kind of see where the gaps are for your business. And the reason is because those are where we fall. Those gaps are where we get blindsided. And a lot of times it's kind of filling in that space where sometimes we just don't know, right? Like there are a lot of things that I may not know in the accounting world because that's not my expertise. And so unless the tax person says it to me, I'm like, okay, yes, you were right. I'm going to do this now. But even with the law, it's like that because it can become really nuanced and it also can become overwhelming in general. And so I do provide those services, I have subscription-based services to make law accessible. And so what I would do if I was going to start off, like, if you were just wanting to just kind of start off on your own, is really do an inventory of your business operations and audit that. Like, take like a week and see how you're doing, like how some people do a time log on how they're spending their time, or they do a food log on what they're eating all day long. We'll do like, what are my business operations looking like? And inadvertently, you might even create an SOP, your system, your standard operating processes as you're doing
Bonus.
it. Always super helpful. Oh,
Bonus.
love those things. But you kind of go through the process. Like, what does it look like when I'm advertising to my clients? What am I doing? And when I'm onboarding them, what does that look like? And then when I've onboarded them, what does that look like? And then post onboarding, and I'm providing them services, what does that look like? How does that happen? Like, what is the feel? A lot of times there's a lot of negativity that's happening throughout the year. So even if you don't do a week long audit, you can just kind of like take a log every single time there's something negative that pops up, or it could be a friction. It doesn't even have to be like an obvious negative moment. It can just be like, man, that just did not sit well with me today. Write it down because we're going to forget. And so as you're writing it down, like, if you're doing a quarterly review of your business or a mid-year review or an annual review, whatever you're doing, you can at least go through all of those things and see where the pain points are with the various type of people that are going in and out of your business. And then you can tackle those. A lot of those issues you can actually tackle through legal strategies. And a lot of those legal strategies are having proper operations in place, your business operations, and having a proper contract in place as well.
All right, this is good stuff. And I know that There are probably people who are getting a little bit nervous right now, thinking to themselves, oh man, what haven't I done that I need to do? Um, but knowledge is power. And this isn't supposed to be a scare tactic. This is supposed to be an exercise in empowerment, because a lot of times we don't actually ever encounter a challenge, but there's a peace of mind that comes from having all of our ducks in a row.
Mhm.
So now I want to segue a little bit back to the contract side of things, because I know that this is an area that you specialize in. So can you talk a little bit about what you've got going on there and how you are helping business owners with the contract side of things in their business?
Yeah. And so, I definitely, my business focuses on contracts because a lot of business law is contracts and there's a lot of transactional. So business law is like transactional law. It could be corporate law. It could be a lot of different, names to it. And so the reason we even have a contract, like I said earlier, is so that you are really solidifying that relationship that you're about to get into. And why? Because that relationship, if you're a CEO or an owner of your company, that relationship is supposed to impact your bottom line, right? It's supposed to be something that is helping the revenue stream. And you want to make sure there's minimal hiccups during that revenue stream operation that's happening. And so contracts are a great tool to use in order to streamline that process, in order to make sure that as an owner, I have seen these 5 issues that happen. And I want to make sure that my contract is addressing those 5 issues to minimize the impact if that were to happen in this relationship today. And so contracts are mitigating in nature, meaning they're kind of lessening the blow a little bit. And they're also at the same time giving notice. They're allowing others to be aware of these issues and to know that, hey, if this were to happen, then this is the consequence. And consequence not in a negative way, but just this is the process to follow, or this is what's going to happen, right? And it also just delineates like clear lines of this is how we're supposed to do XYZ. You're supposed to pay me this much. I'm going to give you deliver this much in services or products. And then this is how everything else unravels, right? And so contracts are beautiful if used the right way. Contracts can be overwhelming if you don't even know what you're doing, right? And so for me, it's really important, like you said, knowledge is power. It's really important for your business owner, whether you're CEO or small mom and pop store, it just doesn't matter. You need to be having some working knowledge of the law in your business, but then you also need to know that you have to read that contract. You cannot blindly just assume that it's the perfect contract for you and then just hand it over to the other person on the side of the table. And if they ask you a question, you can't respond to it. You cannot explain why you have a certain clause in the contract. So you need to have a working knowledge of your contract also. You can do Google. It's okay. Like like you said, this is not about causing fear. This is more about empowering you. So there's many ways to create a contract for your business. The most traditional way is to go to a lawyer because they'll definitely create something that is, of course, they've had tremendous amounts of education and experience in their things, so they know how to craft it for you. But you can also do a lot of DIYs because there are contracts out there, templates that you can purchase and you can DIY it yourself. And now, I think a lot of people have been using Chat GPT, which I would, not be like, hey, go ahead and do that. But at the same time, it's probably maybe better than just Googling and cutting, pasting through a Google sheet. At the end of the day, you want to read it and you want to make sure that it aligns with your business practices, number one, and also it aligns with the way the values and mission of your business are. You don't want to have certain clauses in there when you're like, I really just don't care. Like, I don't care if my clients don't like something, I want to be able to give them 100% refund. Meanwhile, there are other people that are like, oh, no, no, no. Once paid, there's no refund going back. And so you want to make sure your contract reflects that. You can't just blindly just send something out there. And so contracts are very important. They're a beautiful tool to use. And, again, just another thing is like when you are giving a contract, the first time that contract is seen, or even any clauses that are important to you, should not be when you first hand it over to the person. to your client or whatever, you should have already addressed a lot of the big issues or the big points that are important to you during on your website, during the onboarding call, during the onboarding itself, like maybe the discovery call and then the onboarding, and then post onboarding, just kind of do a quick review of some things that are important. Why? So that when they actually receive the contract, if there's certain clauses that are in there that seem a little aggressive or seem a little like, why would they do this? They've already known. They already know why you're doing it because you've already had a conversation with them. And that's why contracts should be a direct reflection of the understanding and not just lots of words. Lots of words. It's overwhelming.
This is a great conversation. Just in the explanation that you've provided about the sort of the why and the how and everything that should be addressed within the contract. It's a mindset shift for a lot of people. I think, we have a tendency to think of contracts as being either this big scary thing, right? Or some people have commitment issues. And so for them, it's like contract means commitment. And then, you've got the association with the terms of service that like just scroll on to infinity. And you're like, okay, well, I'm obviously not going to be reading that. So I guess I'm just taking a gamble here and hoping that I didn't sign my life away. But the way that you have walked us through the value and the importance of contracts is such a great mindset shift. And I really hope that some people who need to take this more seriously have a different association now that will help them to implement this with less resistance.
Yeah, thank you. I truly think that it is a mindset shift because a lot of times, business owners, and even growing up, we're taught, oh, go to the law, sue somebody. Like that's when you go to the law when you wanted to like really do some litigation. But there's so many other types of law that are out there that are required and inherently integrated into your business. Like you just can't get away from it. So might as well get the rein on it from the beginning rather than getting into the weeds when, you can't even think straight because there's so much stress around you and chaos. And so the idea is to be preemptive. The idea is not to put the Band-Aid, but to really just take away those issues if you can, or just lessen the blow of them if you can too.
This has been a fantastic conversation. I know that there's probably a lot more that you could educate us on, myself included. That is one area of business where I don't feel like I'm particularly savvy. And so I found this conversation very, very beneficial, and I'm sure many of our listeners have as well. This is a perfect opportunity for you to share with our listeners how they can connect with you.
Oh my gosh, I would love to say hi. Tell me that you heard this podcast. And so you got me on Alicia Cramer's podcast. It's at G as in George, B as in boy, PLAW at GBP Law. I'm literally available on that on every single medium. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, pop in, send me a DM, say hi. I'd love to see you and say hi as well. GBP Law, you can go there and you can see all things related and all the services that we do provide. I also have a contract template shop called Your Contract Buddy, where we sell very comprehensive contract templates. So it's just plug and play for those.
So good. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. It has been an enlightening conversation about the law as it relates to business. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope our listeners did as well.
Thank you so much, Alicia. This is an honor to be here with you today.
And thank you to all of our listeners. We are doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.